Hey guys, and welcome. So what's been happening in the hobby this week? Well, I thought we'd talk about, I guess, old 40k or old hammer versus new hammer, versus the current edition, and specifically 40k for now. I'm definitely going to do a video in the future on my experience of getting into AOS for the first time after being an old school fantasy player and my thoughts on that. But today we're gonna have a bit of a discussion on how I've experienced coming back into the hobby after a time away. And I've been in the hobby since, forever. So I've experienced pretty much every edition that's for 40k that's been right back to Rogue Trader. And my biggest experience would have been, late 90s and the early 2000s. I also worked for the company back then, Games Workshop here in Australia. So I had a very intimate and, very unique experience with what many consider to be one of the golden ages, I guess, of the hobby. It saw the beginnings of all of the multi-part plastic kits, the Rhino chassis, the Land Raider chassis, the Space Marine Tactical Squad, the Tau, which are in front of me here. They were released. These are originals from when it was first released, and I was, working in the stores here in Australia for when that released. A lot of really historical things happened. Then the Chaos book came out for that edition. I think is it third edition yet, with the Dark Eldar and the Black Templar and the starter box set. During that edition, you had the Chaos book that came out, which was a real, great advancement for codexes, and that also influenced a lot of later codexes and so on. So there's a whole big time then, and so that was my experiences. And so then a period of a bit over a decade that I stopped, and coming back into it now, we see a very different game, really, and one that I really love, and so let's get that out of the way straight away. I'm not one of those old grumpy Warhammer players that don't like the new editions. I even like the new Primaris. It was a little bit of I was like, what is this stuff? What's this new Primaris stuff? Where's the Marines? And it took me a little bit of getting used to. I was like, okay, but after painting them, especially from a hobby point of view, I'm old now, and my eyes are stuffed, and it's very difficult to see the small details, and so I really love the scale change, especially. We can talk about design features and so on. I would love to have seen some of these Primaris models without these front guards, so that you could more easily convert them to, let's say, one of my favorite armor types, Mark 6. Those helmets were great, and I would love to have seen that in the design. But anyway, we're not going to talk about that just yet. So we're just talking about the experience of it, and one of the things that attracted me, I really love about the new game is the card system and the strategy, stratagems and all that. So you've got this sort of mini card game thing going on top of the broader game, and so it's more complex, and there's more synergies and interactions between rules, which I really love, and that's something that drew me in, as well as just the fact that the hobby has exploded with such beautiful plastic kits. I mean, no one can deny how just amazing these kits are. I mean, when I remember I walked into the Games Workshop for the first time after being away from it, and I didn't know about any of that stuff. I literally had dropped out of the hobby for a little bit there. I vaguely knew, but I didn't really know. And the first thing that hit me was just the sheer plethora of choice, and just the number of terrain kits and all those buildings and the detail on them. And I was just amazed, how wonderfully awesome it was to see all that, because we used to have to make all that. We'd just be banging away making stuff in the stores, trying to make it as cool as possible, and to have all of that done for you is just so good, especially for home games as well. It just puts you into the world of Warhammer and gets you into that, the real feeling and the gothic feeling of what this game is, and this world is, the lore is, and so that was great to see, and so that all was really, really cool coming back into the hobby. And so then gaming. So what the differences there? Well, before we get onto the gaming side, let's look at the models themselves. So we've got some in front of me. I don't have a lot of the old school stuff with me at the moment, which is a shame, because working for the company, I have a lot of stuff, but it's all stored away and I can't get to it right now. But I do have some, and we even have the classic, goblin green base. There he is. Okay, with his little Vietnamese inspired hat on. That when these first came out, because it was that sort of that kind of I guess anime feel to these. I wanted to get some of that anime thing, so I was like Raiden's hat or something like that, that sort of thing. And so I was going through and doing all this. I was just done from like one of those shield drones, and then doing that for these ones, doing that sort of Vietnam style thing. So we had like all the cam patterns and stuff, and I did that on the vehicles and everything. It was just a bit of fun, just to play around with themes. And then the bases and everything with that old school flock. Can you see that really bright old school flock? This is a lot of fun. So I had a lot of fun in the stores mucking around with these when they first came out. You can see the size difference. I mean, we're still using those in the tower now, but you can see the old stealth suits here and how tiny they are. Like, I guess they're actually in really good scale to the new Primaris. I mean, that's really what a Tau sort of looks like. But I think the new ones are a little bit chunkier and bigger now. And you can see here one of these. I think this is a limited model. You can't get this anymore. This came out for the release, I'm pretty sure. And, so they're actually kind of in scale. But when you have a look at this battle suit here, this broadside, I mean, he's a real cutie. Yeah, he's just trying to be a big guy. But he's not really. I mean, you look at the size of the chaplain here, compared to him. I mean, he's not that much bigger. He's only just standing tall. Trying to stand up to him. If you put them side by side there, you can see that he's really going to have a tough time when it gets to close combat. So it's kind of endearing that they're that small. And maybe they should have kept them like that, because that would have really made them, I guess, the comedy of these, like Tau, this new race trying to come up and stand up against something like a Space Marine. And now that they're in their more true scale, you really see how imposing these things are compared to this little guy here. I mean, you can understand their rules when it's like that, but yeah, I do love the new models for Tau and stuff. Those bigger suits. It's more imposing, more epic, which is cool and easier to paint as well for someone old like me. So they're just from an aesthetic point of view and from a design point of view, I think it's all really, really positive. As I said, it'd be nice to have an armor thing that doesn't have all these neck guards, so that you can put the other pointed helms on and stuff, and some of the other ones. That'd be great. So you have to chop them up all the time. But that's just a little sideline gripe from an old player. But I really do love everything to do with the model ranges. They're hitting their stride right now. I mean, it's just amazing, and I think it's such a beautiful time to be in the hobby. And as well, coinciding with that, the internet, YouTube, the amount of content that's being produced, including myself, putting out there all of that information, tutorials, tactics talks, everything about the hobby. 3D printing is exploding. We're getting all of that. So it's a really great time to be in the hobby. And so that's all really great. But in terms of the rules, let's talk about the rules from old to new. Now, there is a couple of things. Although I really love the new game and I love the way it's played and I love what they're doing with it, I think 9th edition is probably their best. I've only had experience. I came into 8th edition, so I've only had two editions to really work off here. But compared to like the old days, the early 2000s, I do think it is a better game ultimately. But there are a couple of little things from the old edition that I feel could easily be brought back and would help to, I think, give some value for the points you're paying and the kind of characters you have. There's a couple of things that I guess I would really love to see, and maybe some of you out there might think also that would be cool or not, I don't know, or are from that time that do miss those things. And I guess one of the really, really big ones is initiative. One of the things that really shocked me when I came back in was that there was no initiative value on anything. And that's something in AOS, but I'll talk about that later, but their stat line. But, initiative's gone. And I was like, oh, what's going on? Like, what do you do? How do you fight combats? And then it was like, oh, okay, so you charge. The benefit for charging now is charges go first, rather in the old days you get +1 attack, right, if you charged. But it was based on initiative. And so what initiative meant is that, the higher initiative gets to go first, same initiative simultaneous. So if you killed them, they would still get to fight back. And lower initiative, obviously, you go last. So if they manage to kill you, you don't get to fight. you don't get to make your attacks back and stuff like that, right? So the initiative thing allowed for a bit of nuance, and what it also meant is that certain characters were just faster naturally, right? No matter whether you charge them or not. You know, we get this. Here we go. We get this little guy here. We got the Tau. Back in the day, you know, and he's gonna charge the chaplain. Well, there's no world where that Tau Fire Warrior will ever get the jump on that chaplain. That chaplain will know he's coming from a mile away, okay? Or even a bigger example, a Demon Prince. You know, you put a Demon Prince here and have the Tau, you know, charge him. The Tau's never getting the jump on that Demon Prince. It's just not happening. It doesn't matter if you charged. You're not getting to go first. That Demon Prince will fight first. And so initiative really helps to establish that, and so giving a different bonus for charging and like, yeah, the +1 attack, you know, that was perfect, you know, and having initiative, I don't think that would really ruin the game or even change much. But it would give you better value, because what I've also noticed is that if you just remove the 2 wound thing from the Marines and give them back 1 wound, just in 8th edition, they were 15 points, I think, for a Marine. Well, that's what they were like 20 years ago. You know, the points values, the value is actually quite similar, but you've lost initiative. And I think that would help a lot of things, because you know, it would mean that Eldar are pretty much always going first, you know, and they'd be even faster, and they would gain a lot from that. And I mean, obviously Guard and Tower are going to suffer because they're obviously at a lower initiative. So the average was usually like a 3 for most standard sort of lower class, I guess, you know, more average humanoids or human beings or Tau, and then, you know, Marines were initiative 4, and then other things that were higher, you know, were like Eldar initiative 5, and characters were always 5s and 6s and stuff like that. And so that means that your Demon Prince is always going first, unless they're up against something that really knows how to fight, you know, like an Eldar character or something like that. And so that allowed for that difference, and it meant that you have to really think about when you're going to charge in and whether that's even worth it. So it would change the game a bit and give a bit of nuance and give some different types of bonuses as well for charging. And so I don't know, I would really love to see that back in the game. I think that would be really great. And the next thing that I noticed was you know, rend and AP and modifying armor in specifically high strength weapons and close combat weapons. And that is that there's nothing that really negates invulnerable saves or armor anymore. It's very rare, right? And even rarer in 9th edition. And back in the day, so your power weapons, your power fists, thunder hammers, all that kind of stuff would negate armor, negate invulnerable saves. You know, negate armor, but you'd have to have an invulnerable save to save against it. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. So, you know, power weapons and power fists, they would just rip through normal armor. You would need an invulnerable save to save against it. And here in this edition, you don't have that. You have the, you know, modifiers to armor, which is fine, but what I find is that they're not very high on those weapons. So, you know, if you're another Marine player or whatever, you're still probably going to get a save. Even if it's a 6, you're still getting some kind of save, or quite often. And not on everything, but certainly quite a bit of it. And so you're not assured a kill. You know, you're not assured if you put that in. And so I kind of like the certainty of those power weapons and the way they worked back in the day, because you kind of knew what you were going to get from it. You still do, I guess the maths still add up, you know, the dice maths, you're still getting that value, but I don't know, I'd love to see a few more of those weapons come back into play, and also maybe I like how they're doing the whole minimum damage for a lot of these things, so you're getting a short amount of damage, which is another aspect of the game that's new. You know, this sort of damage modifier that's in the game now, that's different from old, which I do like. But, you know, things like a las cannon, that should be way more powerful than it is. It should at least do 2 damage. You know, come on. It should never have a 1 damage. You know, that thing's an energy beam. Even if you're near it, it's going to melt your skin. You know, it's going to evaporate you. So it doesn't have to glance you to even do that. So I feel like some of those classic weapons could benefit from a little buff like that, but also just, you know, negating armor. And so, you know, the new Be'lakor model's been released, and, you know, he negates invulnerable saves, and it's like, whoa, that's like super strong and everything. Well, back in the day, that wouldn't have been that much different from anything else that was in the game, because we had a lot of those kinds of things. And I think it's a good thing that that's coming back, because it's going to mean that we're going to get some slightly I guess more range of abilities across the board in terms of both guns and close combat weapons. I feel like that's, having that as the high end, and then we're able to scale down and have more variety across the board. I think that's a good thing for the game. So they're not all just kind of like the same thing, damage to -1 or -2 +1 strength. Just having a bit more nasty things sprinkled across, not just for Space Marines or Chaos or whatever, but also for Eldar. Eldar really need that. I could imagine a world where we allow maybe Eldar weapons, and I'm not an Eldar player, never liked those elves, but, allowing them to have their power weapons just negate armor. You need invulnerable saves or feel no pain saves to save against them. That'd be really vicious. You imagine that on like some Banshees or something. That'd be really great, rather than just the sort of +1 strength, whatever it is now, and -2 or whatever. Or -1. So I think those kind of things, those older concepts, could easily be brought back in to really ramp up some of that. That would benefit something like Tau for their weapons, having a more vicious kind of level of damage, not just in the damage profile, but the initial hit. If you fail, having it ignore armor and stuff like that on some weapons, I think that would be really great. And then the last thing, or maybe not the last, but we'll talk about this next little thing, which is a concept that was in the game back in the day, which was that if the strength of something was double your toughness, if you lost a wound to that, you were dead outright, no matter how many wounds you had. And I would really like to see that back in the game. Not on everything, but on certain types of weapons that are designed to bust through tank armor or Titan armor. I feel like if you get wounded by that, you should just die. There shouldn't be you lose damage D6, whatever it is, or however many wounds you lose. I think you should kind of be dead, and it'll make you think twice before peeking out of that bit of terrain when there's a demolisher cannon or a las cannon pointed at you. You're going to have to decide whether that's a good thing if you're a lower toughness character. And I think that would put things in check a little bit for certain types of more brazen running around the table kind of tactics that some of the, especially Space Marine armies can do. They're going to have to watch it a little bit, because if they clip if you got a toughness 4 Space Marine character and he clips a wound from something that's strength 8 or above, well, now he's dead. He doesn't get to be the Smash Captain running around anymore. He gets to be just a big pile of red mist in the air, or in the ground. And I think that would be really helpful for armies that can't compete with that kind of close combat stuff. Think about some really cool orc characters that could, with their power claws. So I think things like power fist, power claw kind of weapons, thunder hammers, las cannons, multi-melters, and the equivalents of other armies in other armies, Eldar and so on. Some of those particular ones could have modifiers on them to, a special rule that says if you are, if this weapon is double, the strength is double the toughness of the opponent, then they cop a wound and they die. Just for maybe even do it for relic weapons, so there's only one in your army or something like that, or have a system of relic, shooting weapons, las cannons and so on, that you could upgrade to have a couple of those in the army. So like a war gear, like a relic system for your guns, on big tanks and things like that. Sort of what Tau's got a little bit of that, I think, in their rules now. They've got in the one of their updates has things where they can upgrade certain weapons. So maybe have that a bit more across the board and allow for some of that kind of thing. That would be really, really interesting to further diversify the range of quality. Get a little bit of that Diablo, loot system going on. Where you have qualities of weapons that are varied. That would really, really help, I think. So they're just some things that I've noticed about the old game compared to the new that I really love from the old editions that I think work really well and could probably be integrated quite easily. You have to be careful how much of that you add, because you don't want to have a stupidly overpowered sort of system. But I think some careful careful additives like that, especially for some of the other races that could really benefit from stuff like that when they're countering the main opponent, which is the strongest thing. You'd have some choice there. So I don't know. They're just my thoughts on from old hammer to new. I definitely do love it, and I think this is a great time to be in the hobby, and definitely worth doing for sure. But yeah, that's just some little thoughts I've had for this week. Next week we'll look at my experience with entering into AOS, just my initial thoughts on it, and what I think about it compared to fantasy. And yeah, that might be a little bit more of a rant, I guess, but we'll save that for next week. So yeah, if you've liked this, please subscribe, hit the notify button, and yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I guess I'll catch you on the next one.